A lot of people say that when you want to learn a musical instrument, it's harder when you're an adult. I don't believe it's harder when you're an adult. I believe that everything else in your life is easier than when you were 7. I think when you're 7 years old, everything is hard. Yeah. Feeding yourself without getting food on your shirt, tying your shoes, waking up in the morning, getting to school on time, knowing what you have to do. Everything is hard. You hand a 7-year-old a guitar, it's just as hard as everything else in their life. When you're 40, you can probably tie your shoes pretty well. Yeah. You probably don't spill too much on yourself very often. You probably can drive a car. You can probably know how to talk to people in public. You hand somebody a guitar, it's as hard as everything was when they were 7. Right. And they don't want to do that anymore.
From the business capital of the world, the Big Apple, New York, Middle Tennessee, it says here. Yeah. Sounds riveting. This is the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, a podcast about Middle Tennessee business owners and professionals.
Yeah, mostly.
Mostly.
That's right. Mr. Matt Wilson, check his podcast out. Mostly Marketing Podcast. He's been my voice guy since we reconfigured this whole show around this time last year. Check us out at MMTBP.com. This is a video and audio podcast. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. This is also a podcast where we talk to Middle Tennessee business owners, professionals, and entrepreneurs, and we have real conversations that meander. You never know where they'll go. We'll talk about business. We'll talk about how people got to where they are and challenges and such, but sometimes they just, last episode or a couple episodes ago I had with Marty Ray, we tried calling Vanilla Ice on the phone, so you just never know what may come up. Like I said, this is a video and audio podcast. Check us out at mmtbp.com where you can pick your poison. I am your host, Jim McCarthy, with jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com and it'syourshow.co, where fine podcasts like this are made and produced. So if you're looking to start one or need to improve your own or need some counseling, let us know. Hit us up there. And today, you always hear me talk about people that can go to the website, mmtbp.com, and click on the link to apply. And this gentleman did, and it's legit because he's actually from Middle Tennessee, because about 8 out of 10 of them are from like other parts of the country. And they're all like, hey, can I be on? And I say, yeah, that's, you got an interesting story. Where in Middle Tennessee are you? Well, I'm in Oregon. Well, that's not going to work. So obviously you're not as big of a fan as you say you are of the podcast. It happens, guys, all the time. So this is, we're going to get into like a lot of creative talk today, especially if you're a creative photographer, videographer, musician, songwriter, writer, things of that nature. Typically when creatives and business cross-pollinate, it's tough to reconcile. And you got to have that business mind and sales mind. I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot about that. Mr. Jordan Roepke from Jordan Roepke Photography, sir. Thanks for coming out here.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming out and being a friend.
Well, everybody needs friends. Everybody needs friends.
We really do. So you came all the way out here from Murfreesboro, and for those of you who aren't aware, anybody listening out of state or considering to move here, Murfreesboro is considered the geographical center of the state of Tennessee. Did you know that?
I didn't. It makes sense, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They actually considered it to be the capital, or when they were considering capitals once upon a time.
I have heard that, yes. Yeah.
But it's a burgeoning, growing community. And as we talked previously, you're not from around here. You're a transplant from somewhere.
Everyone's from somewhere.
Milwaukee.
That's right.
That's right.
Between the two rivers.
That's right. You ever see that scene from, not Austin Powers,
Wayne's
but
World.
Wayne's World.
Yeah.
Alice Cooper schools everybody on the history of Milwaukee.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to really give yourself a challenge, just look up a map of Wisconsin and try to pronounce anything you see on the list,
Oh, really?
Yeah. There are lots of fun ones up there.
Well, you got Green Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Oconomowoc.
Yeah. And Fond du Lac.
Fond du Lac. Yeah. Yeah. Fond du Lac, Oconomowoc, Waukesha, Wauwatosa is a good one.
There's a town in Massachusetts that's, it looks like it's Worcestershire, right?
Worcester.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah, like the sauce.
That's right. And even here, when you move to town, there's a street that starts with a D in downtown Nashville. Mm-hmm. It looks like it should say Demon Brewing, but the emphasis is on the wrong syllable. and it's the Munbrian.
Yes, they try to get you every time.
When I got in the radio, they taught us about that phenomenon, about how make sure you know the idiosyncrasies of whatever city you're going to be moving to, because in radio a lot you had to move around if you wanted to move up. And the guy, because I went to Connecticut School of Broadcasting in Connecticut, and he says, for example, in Hartford, there's a street that is called a certain name, and it's spelled Sigourney. So how would you say that?
If I was not from Hartford, I'd say Sigourney.
Right. It's Sigourney.
Yeah.
You never
that
know.
too.
Yeah. Funny story. When I moved to Vegas, I wasn't as worldly as I am now, and that's even stretching. But one of our U.S. senator of the state was John Ensign. And I had to do a spot for the local Chamber of Commerce that aired and everything. They change it up every week. And I said, hey, Senator John Ensign will be there. And it was John Ensign. Yeah, they raced into the production room and said, you need to change that right now. Because that's, we being a news talk station, we should know his name.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, I'm new. I'm 25 and I'm into politics. So you started out, actually, we were talking about Pasadena before.
Yes.
You were near there. Is that where you grew up?
No, I'm from Milwaukee. I grew up, I'm super proud to be from Wisconsin. It's a great place to be from. And I say that with all the love in my heart. I feel like, it just, having kind of that Midwest upbringing is something that, is helpful, But like many young men who grew up in the frozen tundra of the North,
right?
I moved out to sunny California pretty early. So I was about 24 when I moved out to California, and so I had originally moved out. I grew up in Milwaukee playing in rock and metal and all those kind of bands as a guitar player. Found the guitar at the age of 14 and kind of never put it down. If I didn't have to. So moved out to Pasadena to be a rock guitar player. And a couple of years out there, I ended up connecting with a lot of country artists. And there is actually a pretty interesting, unique country scene in Southern California. It's actually really cool. A lot of line dancing, actually. Line dancing is super popular out there. At least it was when I was out there.
Was it Orange County?
Orange County, out in the Inland Empire a lot. Yeah. But even in LA, like, when I moved away, they were just opening like a couple of, high end, nightlife spots out near the Strip that were country line dancing. So I'm not sure how it is now. I mean, that was 10 years ago, but so I moved out there and ended up connecting with a bunch of country players and did that for a few years. And I thought, well, I'll get, playing country now, go to Nashville. So I moved here, and kind of the politics around the music industry in Nashville are kind of very specific. So what ended up happening was I ended up connecting with a rock and metal band out here, and then I toured for 5 years as a rock guitar player. Yeah. So kind of an interesting shift.
Well, when you're talking about rock and metal, there's so many different sub-genres. You got thrash, you got, emo, speed, all that kind of stuff. What kind of metal was it? Like groove?
Kind of all the above. I'm really into progressive music. So, in the old school, that would be like Rush. Dream Theater is my all-time favorite band.
They're coming here in February.
I know, I saw that.
You got your tickets?
Not yet. Yeah. But we do have our tickets for Ghost.
Cheap.
So we're going to see Ghost at the Bridgestone.
Cheap plug for Dream Theater. Not that they need it from me, but they're coming to the Ryman, not the Ryman Auditorium, but the Opry House. And they were here about 2 years ago, and it was kind of funny because the lead singer, anybody who knows Dream Theater, you know what I'm talking about. Those of you who don't, they are a math band, essentially. So they will turn beats upside down and right side up and try and confuse the listener as much as they possibly can. It's an art form that's just very mathematical. And I think at one point they play in 1916 time on one of their songs. So it's actually when you hear it played out, you're like, oh, okay, I get that. But when you hear it on the surface, 1916 time, what is that? But anyway, if you're a musician, you might understand that. They played a couple of years ago, I think in the winter. Yeah, it's 2022. So yeah, about 3 years ago. And James LeBrie was like, man, if the spirits in here could talk. Because, how many legends played on that stage, right? Yeah. Over the years. And Dream Theater comes in there, and he's like, the one sentiment they're probably thinking is, that's too many notes, way too many notes. Because I mean, that's one one of those articulate bands. And now it's different this time because they have the original drummer back.
Yep, Portnoy.
So, that's right. So you had a little story about old Wolfgang.
Yeah. So for a long time, being a musician, you have to pick up alternative modes of income. And one of those for me for a very long time was being a guitar teacher. So I would go to people's houses and I would, teach guitar. And I had a young man in Pasadena who was very passionate about the guitar, not as passionate about practicing, but very passionate about the guitar. And he casually mentioned one day that Van Halen is from Pasadena. So casually mentioned that he was actually classmates with Wolfgang Van Halen. Again, this was about 10 years ago. So it was very interesting to sort of go, well, why are you taking lessons from me, man?
Well, it's kind of funny that you're saying, I thought you were going to talk about Wolfgang taking lessons from you. And I'm going, he's got the teacher of teachers.
I know. Yeah, no way. No.
Yeah.
Go talk to your dad,
Right.
At the time.
Well, sometimes, what dad says and what the kid absorbs is two entirely different things.
Well, that's one of the things, I'm a huge fan of Frank Zappa. And if you ever listen to his son, Dweezil Zappa, who's an incredible guitar player in his own right, he talks about, the day that Eddie Van Halen came over and started teaching him guitar.
Yeah.
And obviously Eddie Van Halen is Eddie Van Halen, but Frank Zappa is no slouch on guitar. So
have you read the book that Alex put out recently, Brothers?
I haven't, no.
Yeah, I listened to it. I've got it, I think, over there. But it's it was a last book I listened to, and it just completely drew me in. And now I'm trying to correct the way I say his name because apparently Ed Van Halen was not a fan of being called Eddie.
Edward, yeah.
Edward or Ed.
Yeah.
So just to respect him, he passed in 2020, unfortunately, and a big part of my childhood went with him. But, here we are.
And, got to give Alex his due, too, man.
Totally,
I mean,
right?
He everybody freaks out about Edward, but Alex
They're amazing.
is, hot for teacher. Do you need to say anything else? That's an impossible drum part that he plays effortlessly.
And it's funny because even you go further deep on that album. There's one that there's a song on that album that's really just intricate. It's called Girl Gone Bad. And it is off the charts, even with both of their playing, And Alex never played with anybody else.
No. Very rare that you have kind of brothers. I mean, Alex and Edward and, Diamond Vinny from Pantera. But I mean, when you have, how can you not have a signature sound when the person that you're playing with all the time is the guy you grew up with? And I mean, just every musical idea you've ever had is just bouncing back and forth in that house,
Right.
So,
well, I mean, they also had a musical father.
Yeah.
Who was, a professional musician, but I think a frustrated one because it never really took root. And I think he lived vicariously through his kids. But even in the book, they talk about how they were able to get to the point where they could retire him. And looking back on it, was one of the worst things they did because you took away a man's purpose.
Yeah.
He didn't have to get up in the morning.
Yeah.
And that's when death begins, unfortunately. And, that's why I'm a huge fan of purpose. So.
Yeah.
Does your garage door sound like this? If it does, it's screaming for help. Call Incredible Doors, 931-348-DOOR. We're making garage doors in Murray and Williamson counties work better, sound better, and, well, spring better. We just make them incredible again. Incredible Doors in Spring Hill. When your doors springs break, you need remote reconnections, opener installation, or just about anything to do with your garage door. Go to IncredibleDoors.com or call 931-348-DOOR. Follow us on Facebook for specials on maintenance visits, keypads, and other items. 931-348-DOOR.
So you move here to, I'm surrounded by country music artists out here in L.A. Let's move to Nashville to get into a rock and metal band.
Yeah.
Which makes complete sense.
Yeah. I mean, you go where the people aren't a lot of times in music. So, no, it was great. And the thing about Nashville that a lot of people, maybe you think about it, maybe you don't, but because we're so centrally located in the United States, you can kind of get anywhere as a touring band.
Yeah.
So if you're going to tour and be based anywhere, Nashville's a pretty good place to be based.
It's central. And that's all the country artists. their tour, like you said, their touring schedules are pretty much Monday through Sunday or Wednesday through Sunday. And they actually have the ability to be home, at least some of the time. Whereas if you're in a rock band, you're on the road for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a fun. I looking back on it, my earliest days, being a drummer, I thought that would be a great lifestyle. But knowing a lot of drummers and a lot of musicians in this town, it's like, no, I'm good. Maybe to try it would be kind of cool, but not to have to do it.
I mean, it's fun, I
bet it is.
You meet a lot of interesting people,
and
you get to have a lot of interesting experiences. Everyone thinks, the glamorous life of, you get to see all these interesting places.
Not really.
I got to see the inside of a Days Inn and a Love's most of the time,
And a lot of backstage areas that look all the same.
Yeah. If you're lucky enough to get a backstage.
Right.
Yeah.
Green rooms.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough to get those.
Yeah.
Were you ever get to the point where you didn't have to set up and break down your own gear?
No, we were definitely road warriors in that sense. We were doing a lot of the motorcycle festivals.
Okay.
We were a relatively big band in the motorcycle circuit. So we do, Sturgis every year, and we go down to Daytona and do Daytona Bike Week, and we were out in Galveston, and we would do Ocean City, Maryland, and everywhere, So the thing with the motorcycle circuit is it's kind of like a traveling circus. I mean, it's a lot of the same people in a lot of the same places. Even the bartenders move. So if you can get a good drink from somebody in Sturgis, you're probably getting the same drink from the same girl in Daytona.
Nice.
So it's a big family. It's a big circus, very kind of a lot of craziness, but a lot of fun.
You ever see the Tuttles at those things?
No.
Orange County Choppers?
No.
Paul and Paulie Jr.?
No, never them. Most of the guys that would come, we were good friends with, actually, this is a story. There was a guy who he did some of the custom work on bikes and stuff, and he's a smaller operation than the OC Choppers guys. We were hanging out with him and having a couple of drinks after the show, and he's like, "Oh, you're new in the band." When I first joined the band, "You're new in the band, and where are you from?" "I'm from Milwaukee." "Oh, I'm from Milwaukee. Where'd you grow up?" "Oh, I grew up close to West Dallas." "Oh, I'm from West Dallas." Turns out he was my ice cream man when I was a kid. He ran an ice cream truck in my neighborhood. So.
Did you stop him when he's driving by?
I did.
"I'm your ice cream man." So you moved to Nashville, and at some point you get like, okay, the music thing maybe isn't working out, or I'm kind of getting tired of it or anything. I see that you're married. A lot of those things, life goes on, and you got to figure, okay, what's next? You know, they call Nashville, I believe, a 5-year town, but maybe now it's a 2-year town.
I think it's a 10-year town.
Is it a 10-year town?
Yeah, you got to be here 10 years to make anything in yourself.
Really?
Yeah.
But there's other opportunities in Nashville now, especially to do something, because Broadway and playing in a band in a window or up on one of the levels is the thing to do. Because you can make a good living doing it.
You can make an okay living doing it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to throw anybody under any buses, but it definitely is a situation where the bars pay you as little as they possibly can get away with.
Yeah.
You're doing 4-hour sets with no breaks. And a lot of the ways to make that work is basically, and kind of one of my personal gripes with kind of the way that things are done here, as opposed to, where I grew up in Milwaukee or in LA, is it's very sort of Rolodex-y. So, hey, a singer gets a gig at, some bar on Broadway for a 1:00 shift, calls guitar player A is already playing a different bar, calls guitar player B is playing at a different bar, calls guitar player C's cousin shows up and takes the gig. So as long as you play the same songs the same way in the same key, you can kind of shuffle around, and that's how a lot of those guys make their living. They'll do triples. So they'll do 12-hour days over there. Nashville's
not exactly a place you'll be able to find a way to make a living if you want to play music for a living, but it's really tough to have your own sound as a musician.
Yeah, it's impossible. Yeah, because nobody wants you to have that.
Right.
I mean, I've known really amazing musicians who get a record contract and they get shelved. And the whole point of the record contract is we don't want you competing with our artists, so we're going to sign you and we're just not going to put out anything and we own you for 12 years.
Well, that's on the artist not knowing dude, do
Well,
you not have an attorney for crying out loud?
Well, a lot of these kids are straight out of Belmont. I mean, when you're 19.
Hey, it's a record deal.
Exactly. Oh my God, I graduated Belmont. The dream is real. And then you're 32 before you get out of that contract if they don't sign you to the optional 5-year extension. And by that time, the cute blonde out of Belmont that has a great voice is almost 40 and completely unmarketable at that point. No offense to 40-year-old blondes.
Right. I mean, I once was one. So. Well, I never thought about it that way. I didn't realize that actually went on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very
that's kind of dastardly.
Yeah, there's a lot of that for sure.
Special place in hell kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, record executives and, I was going to say healthcare CEOs, but probably not good for topical.
I don't mean to laugh. My goodness. Yeah, that just happened.
Yeah.
This will be airing probably in a couple of weeks, but as we record this, literally yesterday, the CEO of United Healthcare was, dare I say, taken out.
I mean, straight up assassinated.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing else you could call it.
That guy was cool, calm, and collected, man, like a cucumber.
Just walked up right behind him.
Right. That was an order. That was a hit.
Mm-hmm.
Had to have been.
Did you see that he had, I'm not sure if this is, family friendly for the podcast, but did you see what he had written on those shell casings?
No.
He wrote on the 3 bullets that he used to fire apparently on the shell casings. It was deny, defend, depose, which is apparently the strategy that healthcare companies use to deny paying your claim.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And then the end result being deposition.
Yeah, basically saying like, we're gonna deny your claim. We're gonna defend against it in court, and we're gonna basically ruin your reputation. We're gonna depose you as a person.
Yeah, it'll be on public record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. We live in interesting times.
Yeah, I have if you ever listen to the podcast, I talk about it all the time. The book right behind me, as you see on the screen, it's in the on the right, Pendulum. We're here for a reason. So that's, listen to other episodes because I constantly go into it, and I'm sure people are tired of hearing me talk about it. But it's funny because a drummer is typically the person in the band who is like an octopus or like a Renaissance man. They try different things. In my case, I was a lifelong drummer, but I ended up going to the radio and learning all this kind of stuff. In radio, it taught me how to work with audio and produce audio. Eventually, I learned how to produce video, learned how to shoot video and things that, oddly enough, for radio. And that became like a side hustle thing for me with voiceover and video and audio production, all sorts of stuff. But it was always like a lot of drummers did that. You don't hear too many guitar players expand like that. But I guess I never got into photography. I was more videography. So how did the photography thing start for you?
So when I was at school in Milwaukee, I went to Milwaukee Area Technical College straight out of high school because my mom was like, you have to go to college. And I was like, I don't want to. I want to play guitar. And she's like, no, go to college. So I went to school for music, which is a wonderful investment if you're thinking about it.
Right.
No, it's not.
Right. It's like broadcasting.
Journalism. Yeah.
Right.
But there was a professor there named Jeff Taylor, and I was taking recording classes with him, and he kind of liked what I was doing. And so he was like, I got a spot at my studio for somebody, but we do multimedia. So it's not just recording. You're going to be doing video stuff too. I was like, all right, that's fine. And so, I went to work for him, and the first thing he had me doing was, video editing, these little like web animation things. And there was some product, I don't even know what the product was, but it was basically these little shorts where it was a green screen behind a girl in a bikini, like she was at a bar saying something. I don't know what the product was, but it was these little 20-second snippets. And so I had to edit like 500 of those in Final Cut 1 in 2005, and so, I got a little handy with the video editing, and then he was like, well, we got this indie film coming in. So I need a guy to hold a microphone, basically. So I spent, a couple weeks on this indie film set, which was really interesting, watching the DP and the lighting designer and everybody kind of work together, holding a microphone, staying out of the shot. And when it came time to start the editing, Jeff was like, oh, I got a lot of stuff on my plate. Why don't you start the edit? So I edited, 20 minutes, and he came in. He was like, that's pretty good. Why don't you keep going? So I ended up cutting this whole feture film. Well, I say feature. It was, indie, but, it's a hour, 10 minute short. So I did that, and then we had to do a couple of reshoots, and he didn't want to bring in the original team. And he was like, here's, 50 DVDs on camera moves, learn how to be a DP. And so I kind of did that. And so I ended up doing some pickup shots for that. And, film and photography and cinematography, I am not a very good visual artist when it comes to drawing or painting or anything like that, but I can kind of look at something and put it together. So that was really the start of me being interested in photography and cinematography. But short story long, in 2020, when that happened, I had basically bought a professional camera a couple of years before to do social media stuff for the band. And so when I buy something new, I want to get good at it. And so I just called up a bunch of my musician buddies and was like, hey, let me shoot some photos of you. If you like them, use them. If you don't like them, we'll never speak of this again. And so I started doing that and doing some portraits, and all of a sudden people started kind of asking me to do that. And I had some wedding inquiries. And then 2020 happened. And so touring shut down, and I had a conversation with my wife. She was an essential worker. She was a veterinary technician at the time. Now she is also a wonderful photographer.
Are you guys a team?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. So we do weddings together. And then I do portraits and like teen and senior portraits and stuff like that. And she does boudoir and actually product and food photography as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's really fantastic. So, we kind of came to the decision that, hey, we're getting serious here, and, touring is great, but also can be a lot. And with COVID, who knows when it's going to start up again. So I kind of made the pivot then to do photography full time, and it's been great.
Nice. So just doing that, and did it pick up quickly? I mean, I would imagine, like once you start, you kind of, not that it's a commodity, it's definitely an art form, but there's so many photographers out there, especially photographers. There are people that actually will, put themselves and hang the shingle as a photographer, and they're literally bringing their phone. No professional equipment, nothing.
Yeah.
You at least got to look the part, for crying out loud.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're up against that kind of a competitive landscape. How did is it just, hey, this is what I want to do? Just start with weddings?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was very lucky. So I am one of those people who, if I'm going to buy a vacuum cleaner, I'm on YouTube watching 100 hours of what's the best vacuum cleaner.
Right.
And so I do a lot of research and stuff like that. And I was very lucky when I first started. I was, you don't really know what your niche is going to be when you first start into something like that. It's like picking up an instrument for the first time. You're like, well, maybe I like folk, maybe I like metal, maybe I really want to play the banjo. Who knows? So
in other words, what he's saying is that you have to say yes to everything.
You say yes to everything, but you find what you like, and you find what really kind of ticks your boxes. And for me, it just so happened that all of the photographers that I would look at and really love their work happened to be wedding photographers. So that was for me, kind of the impetus to get into that. And when I was starting out, I heard two things from two of these photographers that I really took to heart, and it really kind of made it easier on me. One was a lot of people, they love photography, and so they think, I'm going to start a business. I love photography. I'm going to start a business. What you should say is, I want to be a business owner. I'm going to be a photographer. And so if you come at it with this business mindset first, it's a lot easier to say no to things that are not going to help you.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I heard was from a guy named Ted Forbes, and he said, your level of ability has nothing to do with your level of success. So
that's the truth in music too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of fantastic photographers who can't feed their families, and there's a lot of really okay, mediocre photographers who are making money hand over fist. So, I think in my industry, especially, and I talk to other photographers, I mentor other photographers. I'm sure I'm a lot of fun at dinner parties, but, I talk to people, and, it really is a situation where, if you don't know your numbers, if you don't know what your what you're doing, a lot of people think, if I was just a better photographer, I would get more clients. If I got this new lens, if I got this new camera, well, my gear is old, or, I'm just not, I have to post more on Instagram, or I have to, and none of that stuff makes the difference. Right. It's running your business like a business, which is something that creatives are notoriously terrible at.
They are. I actually did a lot of speaking on sales with creatives, because even in the voiceover industry, you get a lot of people that they don't like it when there's a race to the bottom. Nobody does in any industry, but when it becomes somewhat of a commodity, you have to contend with that, especially when you have Fiverr, Upwork, all the different websites that are essentially conversation starters for a lot of businesses. There are those out there that will take advantage and try and get as much as they can for as little as they can. But then that kind of perpetuates the whole notion of you know your worth, which always used to drive me nuts. I don't care what you think you're worth. Right. You better be able to sell your worth. It's one thing to know it, it's another to sell it. Yeah. And a lot of creatives fall short there.
Yeah, and I think that's a double-edged sword in a lot of ways too, because what does it mean to know your worth, right? And so a lot of people will go, well, I look at this photographer and they charge X, and I think I'm better than this person, or I look at this photographer and they charge Y, so I don't think I'm quite as good. And you're trying to figure this out where you sit in the market. But the truth is, none of that matters. Yeah. And if you're going to run a business, if you're going to have your doors open, you have to know what your cost of goods are. You have to know what that is. And if I'm losing more money than I'm making, doesn't matter how good or bad I am.
Because the name of the game is to get the job done as quickly as possible. Yeah. This way you're minimizing your exposure time. This way you can move on to another job, but also you're maximizing your dollar rate per hour.
Well, but also thinking about your per hour, I think, is also a little bit of a trap when you're in the creative industry. So if I was in roofing, right? You have two real main expenses. You have your material costs, which obviously you pass on to your customer, and then you have your hourly costs, right? And so if I'm a business owner and I'm saying, hey, I'm going to quote you for 10 hours, I can't really control the cost of materials, but I can try to get my guys to do the job in 9, and that would save me a little bit of money, or at least not take 11 or 12 or 13 or 14 to do the job, So I think the first thing you have to sort of ask, especially when you're a creative going into this market, is what market am I in? Because I think for a lot of creatives, it is this idea, like you said, that kind of race to the bottom, oh my God, I'm in this sea of other photographers. I'm in the sea of other creative people. How do I undercut and sell and get those things that I need? But the truth is, if I need to buy a car, I can buy a Kia or I can buy a Ferrari. Yeah. Right? They're both cars. Yeah. But they mean different things.
Creatives don't like when you make those comparisons.
No, I know.
But I've done that before. Yeah. So, you got to figure out how to make yourself the Lambo and not the Kia.
Yeah. And I think too, if you're saying well, I want to move through these people fast enough, if you have a bulk business model, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think a good example of that would be school photography. Yeah. Right? Where you're going from school to school and photographing all the kids and then doing the senior portraits. And if you have a contract with a school district and stuff like that, you want to get all those kids photographed. You want to make it a good experience. You want to deliver high quality, and you want to do it in a very short amount of time. Real estate is also like that. Yeah. Right. And the defining factor in all of these things, no matter what business model you're trying to latch onto, is this idea of knowing your costs, is this idea of, I'm a very big believer in I am my business. Yeah. So everything is a business expense. My rent is a business expense, or my mortgage is a business expense. What it takes to feed my family is a business expense. If I can't feed myself, I can't show up to shoot your wedding. Right. So all of that is a business expense. Yeah. And then on top of that, you have to look at your goals, right? Because I don't think anybody who is listening to a business podcast is saying, I just want to go to work and work as many hours as possible and have nothing to show for it at the end. The end goal is not to work, right? The end goal is to have a life, to have an existence that, like you said, gives you purpose. Right. And if you're strapped to a desk, or if you're, driving around doing guitar lessons, or if you're any of those things, then I mean, you're doing good work, but is that a purpose?
It's funny because this is the creative industry is the only one that people think it's okay to say, hey, come out and do it and you'll get some experience.
Mm-hmm.
Do it for the exposure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah.
How many times have you heard that?
I'm going to try that with a roofer next time. I'm
going to put your signs all over my neighborhood and, you'll be able to tell the rest of the neighbors that you did my roof.
Yeah.
It's for the exposure, man.
It'll be great. And I'm going to refer everybody to you.
That's
everybody
right.
I know. And you're going to get so much work out of this, man.
You've been down this road.
Yeah.
You've heard this before.
Oh, man. And I mean, I literally had a call this morning, which was basically like, I kind of gave them my rates, and they were like, well, basically it boiled down to, we don't need you to be good. We just need you to be there. And that's what we're willing to pay for. And I'm like, well, I'm not the guy, because just being busy is not enough to be successful.
Right.
And I think that's a trap that a lot of creatives fall into.
And with voiceover, a lot of people, especially when they want to be coached, they come to me and they say, man, I've always been told, and I said, I'll stop you right there. I have a good voice. Yeah. Okay. I said, I didn't have a good voice when I first got into this. Mm-hmm. It took a while for me to practice. What I did have was a ham factor. Mm-hmm. I was able to use what I had and make it work for whatever I was doing. And I made myself very marketable depending on whatever voice I had to pull forward. I didn't always have a deep voice. It was actually very high, not very high, but not a lot higher than it is now. And it doesn't matter if you have a good voice and you sound like you gargle with razor blades. Mm-hmm. Gilbert Gottfried didn't have a good voice.
Right.
But he still was the Aflac duck because he was a ham.
Yeah.
And somebody saw value in that and paid him a lot of money to do it. So how is your ham factor?
Yeah.
And it was funny because on the flip side of that, on the opposite end of the spectrum, you had a guy like Don LaFontaine, who's pretty much the inventor of what we know as the modern day movie trailer. Mm-hmm. He passed on probably a decade ago now, probably over that. But he would sometimes just be in a booth and maybe the producer would be like, hey, a friend of mine asked if you would read his, outgoing voicemail greeting. Oh, what's his name? And I would tell him his name. And he would just rip it out, take him 20 seconds. Mm-hmm. And it would just earn him some sort of, the reward for that for him was like, hey, I made a fan, and he didn't care, even though he was making $35,000 of voiceover for a movie trailer. Yeah. That took him an hour.
Well, there's also the great story about Pablo Picasso, which I love, which is, Pablo Picasso was at a diner one day, and the waitress comes up to him and says, Mr. Picasso, would you mind scrawling something on a napkin? Would you doodle something for me?
No.
And so he pulled out the napkin and he pulled out a pencil and he just kind of doodled, and she comes over to collect it, and he'll be like, that'll be $500. Mm-hmm. And she said, $500? That took you 10 seconds. He says, no, it took me 50 years.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, the unseen part of art. When I was a music teacher, and I would have adult students come to me, I would kind of always give them the same spiel, which is, a lot of people say that when you want to learn a musical instrument, it's harder when you're an adult. I don't believe it's harder when you're an adult. I believe that everything else in your life is easier than when you were 7. I think when you're 7 years old, everything is hard. Yeah. Feeding yourself without getting food on your shirt, tying your shoes, getting waking up in the morning, getting to school on time, knowing what you have to do. Everything is hard. You hand a 7-year-old a guitar, it's just as hard as everything else in their life. When you're 40, you can probably tie your shoes pretty well.
Yeah.
You probably don't spill too much on yourself very often. You probably can drive a car. You can probably know how to talk to people in public. You hand somebody a guitar, it's as hard as everything was when they were 7.
Right.
And they don't want to do that anymore, So it's the time, it's the minutes and the hours. You say, well, I've been doing this for 30 years. Well, great. Why aren't you better? That was always my argument. And that's the first thing that a terrible musician says. Well, I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. Well, why aren't you good yet? It's not the hours, it's the minutes, and it's not the years, it's the minutes and the hours that you spend,
That is so true. You're dropping some wisdom bombs here.
Oh man, I get one a week. You got it.
One a week?
Yeah.
Well, you dropped a lot more than one.
Oh man. I have to spread this episode over 3 weeks. Otherwise I'm violating my contract.
No, you're fine. There's I always come back to voiceover people and talking with them. A lot of them in the groups really want you to have rate integrity, and it's understandable. And a lot of them would actually, I lean on the like a universal rate guide that's out there for voice actors, and I kind of posture with that, and then I kind of dance around it whenever people are asking rates.
Yeah.
And sometimes I might leave money on the table, but it's like, hey, if it works for you, then great. I have a whole philosophy about steak and hamburger clients. Some people will be steak, filet mignon, and sometimes you got to take the hamburger, especially in the beginning. If someone's willing to pay you, $7 a read, and the read takes you, I don't know, 15 seconds, do it. If it's voluminous or voluminous. If you got a lot coming in based on volume, then sure, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
But so many people like, why are you selling yourself short? That's my business. Unless you start paying my mortgage, shut up.
Yeah. Well, there are industries like voiceover acting is a good one. A lot of media industries, you have a scale.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, theoretically, any union has a scale thing that you can look at. And so you at least have a reference for what you should be charging. But I know with photography, especially, so I'll speak to that. But, a lot of people, when you get into photography, you're working at a job you hate and you're making, let's say you're making $600 a week at this job. And you go, well, I got a camera. I've always liked photography. I take photos of my kids. All my friends say that they're good. They want me to take photos of their kids. So, I guess on the weekends I could do 3 sessions. And if I'm charging like $200 a session, then I'm making in 2 days or 3 hours what I make all week.
Yeah.
And that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Right. Well, except for the fact that you don't pay the mortgage for your business. You don't pay the business taxes for your business. You don't pay all of these expenses that go into running a business. You're not paying that for your day job. Now, all of a sudden you have to pay that for your creative endeavor. So, and like I said, as a creative, as an independent, you are your business.
Yeah.
So yes, you've had to pay your mortgage. Yes, you've had to feed yourself, but now you got to, put 10, 20, 30% aside for the government. Now you have to figure out, okay, well, this camera that I'm using is 10 years old. I should probably upgrade that. The average cost of a camera is $3,000 and you can't take any photos with it because you still need a lens and a memory card. Yeah. And then you need a computer that's going to be able to handle modern files and yada, yada, yada. So you have all of these expenses. So what turns into, what starts as, if I charge $200 a session, I can make what I make in a week at my day job is like, man, I got to make like $150,000 a year just to keep the lights on here, and people, and that's one of those things that's kind of bandied around, especially in the photography community. You can be a 6-figure photographer. You can become one. It's aspirational. The truth is, if you're not a 6-figure photographer, you're not going to be in business for very long. You're out of business. Yeah. So just making the 100,000 is I don't want to say it's easy, but it's necessary. Yeah. Right.
And you should try and make it in the first quarter.
Yeah. I mean, if you can, I got lucky where, the first year that I opened my business full time, the first wedding that I shot was September 17th, 2020. That was the first wedding I ever shot. By the following September, I'd made over 100,000 revenue in my business. Yeah. And that blew my mind at the time because I'm doing 210 days on the road with my band, made me $26,000.
Yeah. Because they see it as a passion.
Yeah.
And, well, hey, you love doing this and you're getting to do it, but I'm not going to pay you for it.
Right. Yeah.
It's not like you're a huge name or anything, but with wedding photography especially, it is a high ticket a genre, and a specialized area for a reason, because it's one day, you get one shot. You're dealing with emotional people typically that want to be happy. And, sometimes you got bridezillas and things of that nature. I don't envy you because I've done videography for weddings before. Yeah. It is not fun.
Yeah.
You got to spend all day there getting all the footage, all the highlights, this, that, and the other. And then you got to go slice it and dice it for
weeks, months. Yeah.
Photography is the same way because you got to find the good photos and, I mean, every wedding photography session's got to be at least $5,000-6,000. Has to be.
Yeah. And I, I do my best to educate clients as much as possible because the truth is not everybody has $6,000 in their pockets lying around,
Are they always surprised? Or is that, they got to have, when you're planning a wedding, there's got to be somebody that says, look, you're going to be spending about this, and this for, caterer, for the place. Here's what the general averages are,
I think,
those expectations are set.
Yeah. I mean, I think catering is something that a lot of people don't think about a lot.
Yeah.
And the size of your wedding, I'm not a huge TikToker, but I made one a while ago that was like the easiest way to cut costs for your wedding is just invite less people.
Yeah.
Because catering can be 30, 40, 50, 60, $70 a person, not including alcohol.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to be, well, we're going to have 200 people at our wedding. I mean, that's $14,000 in catering.
Yeah.
So what else, like if that's the thing that's important for you, if you want amazing food, if you want everybody to come to your wedding and go, oh my God, that was the best meal I ever had. This is amazing. Perfect. Spend that money, but I always tell somebody, if you have an $11,000 wedding budget and you want to wear a $10,000 dress, do it.
Yeah.
Figure the rest of it out. Cause that's what's important for you. On the flip side, if you come to me and you say, I have $800 for you to shoot my wedding, I'm going to say, here's what I would recommend as a professional, as someone who knows what you're going to get for $800. Here's what I'm going to recommend for you. Take that $800, spend it on something you really, really want. Cause it doesn't sound like you really, really want photography if you have $800 to spend on it. It sounds like it's something that's just, tangential to what you really, really want out of your wedding day. So take that $800, get a better cake, get a better dinner, spend a couple more days on your honeymoon, put signs up everywhere that says, take as many photos on your phone as you would like. And that should be your wedding photography
and use the hashtag.
Thing, or there are apps or disposable camera apps that will link to like a main Dropbox or Google Drive kind of thing where everybody is like a little retro feel. And do not go. I've had brides. Well, we can't afford a professional wedding photographer, so we were just going to get the disposable cameras and put them on every table.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's go on Amazon and figure out how much a pack of 10 disposable cameras is. How many people are you inviting to your wedding? 200? Okay, that's going to cost you $4,000 in disposable cameras.
Yeah.
And that's going to cost you an extra $15 to $20 per camera to get them developed.
Have you sold cars before?
No.
Because I mean, those are tactics that I used in car sales.
Well, it's true. It's true. I'm not doing anybody any favors by encouraging them to get something bad. I would rather that you don't have a wedding photographer than you have a bad wedding photographer.
Yeah.
Because I have friends who, when we first got into wedding photography, they were like, man, I wish you guys were shooting when we got married. And these are people that have their wedding photos like up on the wall in their home. And they're like, we hate our wedding photos. We don't like them at all. And we had a couple that they sadly are divorced now, although divorce is always good news as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, it's two unhappy people doing what they need to do to make themselves happy.
Yeah.
that's what divorce is.
You got to do divorce party.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we get a second crack at the wedding then too.
Yeah.
But they did the disposable camera thing and they never had them developed. They were sitting in a box up in their attic from the day they got married to now they're divorced. And I'm sure they just went in the trash.
And they're probably nuked because of the heat and all that
stuff.
Oh
yeah. Film goes bad after a couple of years.
Oh my gosh.
Don't spend the money if you don't care.
Yeah.
But if you do care, spend the money,
What about when you're postured against a videographer? What's more important, the photography or the videography?
It depends. I always say that the photography is for the people who are there and the videography is for the people who aren't. Because if you look at a photo, let's say there's a photo of you crying and your mom is standing next to you. And you've just seen yourself in your dress for the first time. You're looking in the mirror. She's hugging you from behind. You're both crying. You know exactly what that moment was for you. You know what she whispered in your ear. You know all the stress that came up to that day. She knows. I mean, this is a moment between the two of you. You look at that photo, you're right back there at that moment that you had. I am not going to have the same emotional connection to that photo. I might think the lighting is beautiful and you guys look amazing and it's a very emotional photo.
I could see it in National Geographic.
National Geographic weddings. That's a new one.
Bride magazine, maybe.
But that photo takes you back to that moment.
Mm-hmm.
For let's say you have an elderly relative who can't make the journey. Let's say you have, young children together that are 2 or 3 or 4 years old. They're not going to remember the wedding day. I mean, I was 4 years old when my sister got married. We have a big gap in the age. So I don't really remember her wedding, to be able to see the moving picture, to see, mom hugging you and you guys both crying and hearing the vows and the music, that is a new experience for those people. It will mean something to you being there for sure. You will remember and relive and see those parts of the day that maybe you weren't present for because you were having your hair and makeup done, or, your groomsman forgot his pants at home and you had to drive him 45 minutes to come back and you missed a chunk of stuff. But it doesn't have like it carries an extra thing that you don't necessarily get from a still image, but the image is more visceral. A still image, I believe, is more visceral because you are assigning meaning to it. It is not giving you meaning of itself.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
And so I definitely feel like, the best art is the art you can see yourself in. And so I can either tell you or I can show you. And that's the difference between photography and videography. So if it's really, really important for you, and don't get me started on wedding content creators, because that's a new thing.
What is that?
Basically people making TikToks of your wedding all day.
Okay.
And for me, I don't love that.
You told me not to get you started on it.
I know you got me started. Yeah. But I mean, it's just a very trendy thing.
Yeah.
And that to me is disposable.
Yeah.
If you have the disposable income and you want to show everybody on your friends list how awesome your wedding was, awesome.
Get a my best life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hashtag blessed.
Yeah. You ever see the guys that are actually out there? They'll go up to like some guy at a gas station who's driving a really nice car. That's a really nice car, man. Hey, you want me to make you a little video? And it's like they show them somebody else, I guess, is there shooting the guy doing the shooting. And then you see the final product at the end of all the stuff they did. And typically it's like with their phone, but it's quite amazing.
Yeah. It's very cool. I mean, the guys who are doing the content creation or influencers or content creators or things like that, that is a very specific type of industry.
Yeah.
And that is virtually 100% disposable. Because it's all about the next set of views.
Yeah.
Because your income is coming from how many people can I get to watch this thing.
Yeah.
And there's only so many people who are interested in that thing. And there's only so many times that those people are going to watch it. So by definition, you have to post every week. You have to, speaking to the podcast producer, you have to keep producing your podcast.
I do.
You can't produce 20 amazing episodes and then call it done and expect to
It's funny that you bring that up because it's like, how many other episodes would I go back and listen to again in any given podcast, not just this one? You might do that with a Joe Rogan. You might want to go back and listen to when he talked to Robert Downey Jr. But once you kind of get the information, you're like, I'm off to the next one. And think about not that it goes, not much energy, just time really goes into this.
Yeah.
One of these things takes me maybe from start to finish 2 hours tops.
Yeah.
To get an episode out.
Yeah.
But
it's a consistent 2 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the difference between like a service and a product, right?
Yeah.
Like if you wrote a book, you write the book once and then you sell as many copies as you possibly can.
Right.
Right. But not with podcasts, not with social media.
Yeah. It really makes me feel bad about this whole thing, what I'm doing.
You're welcome.
People need to, podcasting to me is a legacy play. I've told people this several times. It kind of dawned on me literally when I was in a BNI doing my presentation for podcasting. At that point, I had 9 virtues of podcasting. And literally in that moment, I had the 10th one pop into my head. And I said, how many times would you love, moments in life to hear directly from your father, your mother, maybe they're not here anymore, a grandparent or something like that. We are, for the first time in human history, able to have these real conversations. And this is why I have conversations in this manner on this podcast, is so that my kids have a reference when I'm not here.
Yeah. When
they're in their 40s and 50s and life throws you a curveball and it gets tough. They'll be able to go back and listen probably to any one of these episodes and hear what I have to say about this time in my life.
Yeah.
And
that's the great thing about all of this, about all the content and all of the things, is it's so democratized.
Yeah.
Like literally anybody virtually anybody can afford the tools necessary to do this.
Document.
Yeah. Not necessarily at this level, right?
Yeah.
Because you got the studio and you got the lights and you got the beautiful desk and the microphones and the stuff. But you can take your phone and you can put it on the table and you and I can have a conversation and you can release it as a podcast.
Totally.
You know? So these are tools that everybody has, and you have more freedom to capture your life, to explore your life. I mean, it's what Kodak did for road trips. You know what I mean? Like the 50s, 60s, you had the Brownie, you had the cameras, you had the slideshows, everybody got sick of watching their neighbors' slideshows to Disneyland,
Right.
but that's the wonderful thing. And I think that, clearly you care very much about the craft of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you have, the beautiful radio voice that you have cultivated over all the years that you've been doing it, and the equipment and all of those things. And I think that, that helps that stand out, right? That there's a quality and a care there.
Yeah.
And I think that the democratization, a lot of people kind of bringing it back to photography, a lot of people say, well, everybody has phones now. What do they need you for?
Right.
And that's exactly what I say. You have a phone. What do you need me for?
Right.
Like,
why are we talking
Why
here?
do you need me?
Yeah.
Because you need me, but why? And the thing you need me for is not a photograph. You don't need me for a photograph. You have a phone. That's not what you need. You need something else. What do you need?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm selling. I'm not selling photographs. I tell every single client I talk to, taking your photo is the least important thing I do. Everything else is the important stuff.
Interesting. That's a very abstract way to look at it. A great sales approach too.
Well, I mean, it's true. I mean, getting to the heart, sales is
what is it
key.
really? What problem am I solving for
Right.
you?
Right. I mean, you're not buying a Ferrari because you need a way to get to work.
Right.
You're buying a Ferrari for a lot of other reasons.
Yeah.
You might buy a Kia because you need a way to get to work.
Right.
But it puts you into a mindset of service.
Yeah.
That is important, because if if you send me an email and you go, hey, Jordan, I like your photos. I need family photos. I'm like, great. Meet me at a park at 2:00, wear stuff,
Mm-hmm.
see you then. I can show up and I can give you great photos. But if you email me and you say, hey, Jordan, I love your work. We need family photos. And I go, let's get on the phone. Let's have a conversation. Why do you need family photos?
You
right
and
now?
I think the same exact way.
Because you don't need family photos. You have a phone. You don't need me to show up and
that's the whole notion of a lot, getting back to the voiceover people who will immediately, like, somebody will lowball them out of the gate and, I don't crack my mic for more than $250 and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, but you still need to talk to that customer because it's an impression that could be made right there. It's an experience that they're going to have with you. Get them on the phone and explain to them and try and upsell them and get them to see where you're coming from. And a lot of people don't understand that notion of getting them on the phone, like what you're talking about. And it's literally like, before we get in the rates, tell me about your project. What is it that you're wanting to do? What is this thing that you're wanting? What is it, the outcome? What are your expectations? What, you, tell me. I want to know. And then you get them talking. And in sales, and anytime I could do that, because I sold cars for 3 years, whenever I can get the customer, especially if they had a bad experience at another place, tell me what happened. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. It's really a black eye for our industry, which has got enough of them as it is.
Yeah.
But share with me what happened.
Yeah.
And, oh, really? Oh my God, you're kidding me. What is it that you're looking, and then once they're able to talk, once a customer is able to talk, there's a level of trust they have. Because at that point, you're selling yourself.
Right.
And that's the most important thing. I mean, so many short-sighted, I guess good for the voiceover industry, short-sighted voiceover people will just dismiss a lowball client.
Yeah.
No, entertain the notion.
Yeah.
Because you might be dealing with somebody in an organization who just is a slave to a budget. Hey, I love your voice. I'm a huge fan of yours, but I can only pay you this.
Yeah.
Okay, talk to the guy. He's a fan. maybe he doesn't want to stay there. He's going to move up. And you've already established that you have a somewhat premium rate. So where he goes next, he'll take you with them.
Yeah.
What's the issue? Have the conversation. You're allowing them to get exposure to how it is to work with you. You're able to flex your muscles in terms of, and get a workout and some reps in terms of how to sell yourself. There's so many upsides to it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And if you're going to position yourself in a market, and I think that this goes kind of back to what we started with, which was, you know, in the sea of photographers, and I'm speaking to photographers because that's what I do, but it's true everywhere, right?
Yeah.
In the sea of people that you're competing with, that's not your market, right? I mean, if you look at just wedding photographers in Middle Tennessee, I mean, there's 60,000 people in the Nashville photography Facebook group, I believe.
Yeah. How many again? I'm sorry.
60,000. I think it might be closer to the. I might be way overinflating that number, but it's definitely, you know, a big number.
Yeah.
And so you have that many people in the photography Facebook group, and somebody comes in, hey, I'm getting married next March. I want quotes. Or you go to any wedding group on Facebook, and it's within 30 minutes, there's 700 comments.
It's like I need a realtor.
Yeah, yeah.
Our RIP inbox.
yeah. Never hear the end of it. Assigned to everyone's mailing list.
That's right. I would love to help you buy a home.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd be happy. I hate that term. I would be happy.
Well,
I really hate it. God, it's like, can we find a different term? I would be happy to. Really?
Yeah.
Come on. You'd be happy.
But I think it comes down to what you want, you know, and when you sit down and you talk to somebody, and, you know, using the example of family photos in the park, you know, okay, well, Jim, why is now a great time? You know, it's the middle of winter. Why is now a great time for you to have family photos as opposed to waiting until spring or waiting until fall, when everybody wants to have their family photos done? Well, you know, my uncle, he's in really poor health.
Right.
Okay. And so does your uncle live here? No, he's coming to visit for the holidays. Oh, okay. Are you having other family coming in to visit for the holidays? Yeah, everybody. We think it's our uncle's last Christmas with us, so we have everybody coming in. Okay, so would you like to have photos with every family group with your uncle? Well, yeah, that'd be great. Okay, great. Would you like to have prints of those made? Is this kind of a Christmas present that you're doing for everybody? Is everybody kind of doing this individually, or are you doing this for everyone? Well, I'm doing this for everyone. Okay, great. Would you like to have a family album? Is that something that's important for you, or do you just want the digitals for social media and for posting? No, it'd be really nice to have a print. Okay, would you like to have something for your desk, or would you like to have something for your wall? Well, now we're talking about 30 sets of images that people want printed on their wall as opposed to one photograph of the family together.
Yeah, you're doing an uncovery.
Yeah. And I mean, this is just stuff that, like, I don't come from a sales background necessarily.
Yeah,
I've done a little bit.
Yeah, you did, but you're obviously, either you've listened to enough sales trainers and business-minded people to know what questions to ask. And, you know, obviously the more questions you ask, or the one who controls the conversation is the one asking the questions. And questions are an intrinsic way to be interested in somebody. And as long as they feel you're interested, yeah, sure, I can meet you at 2:00 at the park.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
what are we doing?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Are you familiar with the quack method? I have a feeling you are.
No.
QAQ, question, answer, question.
I've heard that before. I've never heard of the quack. Yeah.
So I, as a young impressionable musician, I did what all young impressionable musicians do, and I got a job at Guitar Center. And the manager at this particular Guitar Center was named Scott, and he would for our sales meetings on Sunday mornings, he'd bring out the TV and we'd watch the Glengarry Glen Ross, Alec Baldwin
that scene.
But
coffees for closes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which if you want to put a fire under yourself, that's a good one to watch.
It is.
But he had this concept of quack. And so for me, I'm a very introverted person.
Yeah.
I like me space. I like my time. I like my space.
Yeah.
But I do find people very interesting. And so the first thing I had to get over was when people came in, it was a commission sales job. So when people came in, you had to talk to them. And I'm not somebody who just wants to go up to, like, I'm not the guy at the bar who goes up to the cute girl at the end. Right. Like, I'm not that guy. So, so I drew an invisible circle around my department.
Mm-hmm.
And I told myself, if anybody crosses into that circle, it's because they want to talk to me. They're coming here to talk to me. So that was my permission that I gave myself. The second thing, the quack strategy is really interesting because it's, you ask a question, they give you an answer, you ask a question about that answer.
Right.
And it is the fastest way to gain friends that I've ever seen. And I mentor other photographers, and this one photographer I was mentoring, she's like, man, I just don't know how to get to the deep stuff. I'm just like, well, just ask questions, you know? And I started it with her. I was like, well, what did you do today? And it just started very simply, you know, and, oh, we did this. Oh, was it your first time doing that? Yeah, it was the first time. And, you know, have you been here before? Yeah, yada, yada, yada. Well, eventually she was telling me about how her grandfather emigrated from Germany and that she really wanted to go visit Germany and it was on her bucket list. And we did that in about 10 minutes, you know? And I'm like, okay, now I know the history of your family up to your grandfather who emigrated from Germany. And so you want to go visit where he's from in Bavaria. Yeah. I just asked you, how was your day? Yeah. You know, so if you keep asking questions, they can be the dumbest questions, or not the dumbest, but the most simplistic questions in the world. But I'm just digging just a little bit. And it's not salesy. It's not digging.
I did that once and it's funny because I'm privy to sales approaches and I study them and I listen to the good ones and the bad ones and the mediocre ones. And there was one time I had a client that needed drone photography or videography, and I'm not licensed, so I wasn't about to risk anything like that. I've done drone videography before, but I'm much more cautious about it now because the FAA has really kind of cracked down on it.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew one guy had a drone videography company, and I called him up and said, hey, I haven't talked to you in a while. How are you? Yada, yada. What are you looking for? I said, well, I just need a quote for a half a day of shooting, need some overhead shots, you know, things. Do you need it? And he was doing that. And after about 5 minutes, I'm like, dude, I just need a rate. Okay. Holy crap. I don't need the Inquisition for crying out loud. Yeah. You know?
Well, if you have somebody trying to hand you money,
right,
that's different. Right. You know, if somebody comes to your door with money in hand, like,
I'm telling
want
you what I need.
Yeah.
I know what I need. I understand how this works. What is your rate for 4 hours? That's what I need. I need to, like, if you can give it to me wholesale that I can mark up, however you're going to do it. Give it. Well, you know, I've got another bunch of questions I'll email. Dude, you're done. I'm moving on. I'm finding somebody else to do this. This is too much of a headache.
Yeah. I'll ask you the questions after you give me the money if I really need the answers to those questions. But you don't.
Are you going to be using it in this market, or is it going to be? I'm like, holy crap, dude. Yeah. I need a freaking buyout. A buyout rate of this footage. It's for an agency up in Connecticut who wants me to, they're hiring me to do it. I don't need the freaking third degree. Holy crap. This is my New York comes out of me at that point. Oh my God. I'm never going to call you again now.
Yeah.
And that really killed it for me.
Well, know your audience, number one.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And it wasn't really, I guess what pissed me off was the fact that they weren't questions that were serving to me.
Right.
They were serving to them.
Yes.
Hey, what are we getting ourselves into? And let's price this accordingly. I'm like, look, I'm telling you, it's literally just panning overhead shots, going down some of the cars, maybe some inside shots of the dealership. That's it. It might take you 2 hours. But if you price it at a half a day, let's go with the half a day. I just need a rate so I can put it into my proposal. Well, how long are we going to be? Dude, what's it going to be running on? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm the middleman. I'm just a production guy.
Yeah.
And it was all them-centric questions, I guess. It was what's the annoying part of it. So, but, so your website is jordanroepkephotography.com. And it's funny because I look at verbiage on a website and I look at font styles and things of that nature. To me, fonts have voices. It's odd, right? So I go to your About page and it says, Meet Jordan. That's how it looks. Wedding photography for the unconventional. That's the way it's that kind of a font. And then you get to the artful. It's like a really capital. And you have these different positioning statements. Adventurous. It's got an intensity behind it. And then finally, epic.
That's right. That's right.
Get in touch. Ask a question.
Can you do my radio ads?
But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's the kind of about. I just happen to look at them like these things have voices to them.
It is tough because the Artful Adventurous Epic thing, there's a lot of marketing gurus who are very into the 3-word mission statement ideas right now.
Right.
And so
How are you on time? Good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just telling telemarketers to F off.
Right. You ever take those calls and just have fun with them?
Occasionally I try to, but somebody called me from my own phone number once.
Oh, really?
And I just, oh man, I picked that up real fast.
Oh, wow.
You know, that was fun. It's like, what do you think this is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not calling myself about my car's extended warranty. No, but the marketing thing, and a lot of the, especially in the photography space, you know, it's open, warm, inviting, and you want to be, you know, very approachable. And I mean, that's true, of course, but, you know, the type of imagery that I really, really like is a little bit more off the beaten path. It's a little bit more creative. It is not, you know, holding hands in walking down a road in a forest, although I do plenty of that too. I really like it when I get to, you know, bust out my lighting kit and do something interesting, and it's the middle of the day and it looks like the middle of the night, and we can get you, you know, something that you're not gonna see everywhere, you know, something that you want to print 50 feet tall and put on a billboard, you know, that's really what I'm after. So, trying to open that avenue with couples, especially when you get somebody coming in being like, well, we just need like 6 hours of wedding coverage. It's like, do you? Are you sure? You know, also, what do you want that final result to be? Because you're thinking about the before, you're not thinking about the after. You're not thinking about having to live with this. Yeah. You know,
I always felt like there was a niche, and I bet you a lot of people would, like, even maybe as a side niche, catching people in not so flattering moments.
Oh,
like mid sneeze or something like that. Of course, you got to wait, you know, until someone sneezes. But, you know, odd looks, like when they're cutting the cake and the bride just kind of gives a side eye glance, like, dude, what are you doing? You know, those types of things.
There's always like, there's a part of me that just wants to deliver only the blinks from a wedding day, like 600 photos of just everyone with their eyes closed.
It's like the intern, I think, was supposed to edit a video for a company, and they put all the breaths together.
So good.
It was just a guy going. Right?
It's so good.
That's the kind of stuff that will go viral, you know?
I do have a mission for myself on every wedding day, and the mission for myself is I try to get a photo of every single bridesmaid taking a bite of a sandwich. That is my goal. Yeah. Jimmy John subs, just the messy subs in their thing. And they're leaning out over the table trying to, it's just, if I can get every bridesmaid eating a sandwich, I am a happy man.
A bride that has to take the pictures with the new mother-in-law and the, you know, does she like her, or are they fans of each other? And, you know, are in between, okay, but the moments in between when they think they're taking the picture, when they're all like congregating and, you know, smile, okay. And then those moments, you know what I mean? That could be a thing.
The real fun ones are when I ask and the couple doesn't tell me that mom and dad are divorced.
Right.
And then you try to get the family photo all together. Okay, mom and dad love up on each other. No, we don't do that. No, you know.
Do you get assertive and be like, love up on each other now?
So you got to feel
this isn't about you.
You got to feel the day out. You got to feel the people out. I have, there's a really famous, I'll tell this story because it is a great story. So I photographed this wedding and they had a very large wedding party. Wonderful people. I'm not going to name any names. It's really funny though. But, so they each had like 13 people on a side. Yeah. And so I always try to like feel out the vibes, especially with groom and groomsmen, because groom and groomsmen, there's like 3 ways that they can be. Number 1 is, hey, cool, we're here for whatever you want. We're good. Whatever you need, we're there. Yeah. Second way is, we want to watch football. Don't bother us. And the third way is kind of half and half, right? It's kind of in the middle. So, with the guys who just want to watch football, I'm like, hey guys, just give me like 5 minutes. If you do everything I say, we can get this done like this. I'll get you in before the commercial break's over. Right.
Yeah.
But this group, they were kind of giving each other shit, you know, and they were kind of ribbing on each other, and it was really funny. So I was kind of picking up on that energy. And so when I was doing individual portraits of the groomsmen, I was kind of like giving them a little bit of something to get a reaction out of them. Cause you get people in good light, you get them in a good pose, and then you make them laugh and they look great.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the bride's brother came and he had this like really nice looking suit, kind of a long double breasted suit. And he had these, you know, really nice shoes, and he had kind of this wide brim hat. And, you know, I get him in the light and everything. And I go to take the first picture. And I'm like, when you have a wedding at 12 and you have to raise a barn at 3, you know, and he's everyone's laughing cause he looks Amish, and, you know, it's great. So one of the groomsmen gets up. He's a big guy, you know, big white guy, probably 6.5 feet tall, you know, broad chested, big shoulders. And I get the camera up and I start kind of chuckling. I'm like, I don't know how to explain it, man, but you look like if a ski trip was a person. And he got really kind of offended by it. He's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? Everybody else is dying laughing. Right. So the whole night he's like, what do you mean? What did you mean by that? What did you mean? And I'm like, dude, I was just trying to get you to laugh. I'm so, like, I don't mean to offend you. I'm just messing around, you know, let's have a good time, you know? So a couple years later, a bridesmaid and a groomsman from that wedding got married, and they asked me to photograph the wedding. So of course, Ski Trip is in their wedding party.
Nice.
So
Remember
sure
me?
enough, yeah, exactly. So sure enough, I don't know. He had something going on. He had a fire under him that day, and he was kind of, you know, being really blustery about stuff and being kind of loud. And I get him outside, and it's a super hot day. And he's like, hey guys, I know we're all hot, and, you know, I'll try to get this done as quick as possible. So I line everybody up, and he's like, man, I don't know what you're talking about. It's not hot out here. I feel great. And I said, well, it's probably because your fly's open. And it was. And just nobody would let him live any of that down. It was so good. But you got to feel it out, right? Like, I'm not doing that at every wedding for sure, but
I had this idea long ago to bring back the cheesy JCPenney Sears family photos with the, you know, even with the 70s attire and the hairdos and stuff like that. But yeah, I never did it.
That's big now, actually.
And it's a thing now, you know. I should have did it then.
I know.
But what's going to be the next thing? Maybe it's the 90s photos, prom photos.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should do like prom style pictures for weddings.
There's a thing in Japan that I think is really interesting. Apparently in Asia, it's really common, like after the wedding, they'll get dressed up the day after and they'll do like normal things in their wedding attire, but they have a photographer there. And so like from the 90s, there's this whole really interesting set of images of like the day after photos where like these beautiful Japanese brides and their husbands are like at 7-Eleven. You know, and like, just like getting a parking ticket from the meter maid. Like, it's just normal everyday stuff in their wedding gear. And it's the 90s. So it's all film and, you know, it looks great. But I wish we would do that here. I think the day after is a really good opportunity to do that.
Well, introduce it as a concept and see what people think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there was another thing I was going to bring up. Of course, I lost track of thought of it. But it was based on, you know, odd little pictures that you could possibly take, like what we're talking about, the day after. Oh gosh, it'll come to me. It was really good though.
There's interesting trends. There's things that I look at and I go, oh, that's actually a really interesting thing to do. And just like with any other set of trends, there's lots of things I'm like, that's going to be the black and white photo with the in color roses.
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
You know, the spot color.
You remember when, I think it was Vince Vaughn, a movie that he was in.
Wedding Crashers?
No, it was more about being in a corporate setting. And for the promotion of the movie, the entire cast, I guess, did a photo shoot like they were taking stock photos.
Oh, that's funny.
And it was very funny.
Yeah.
Like all these big name actors, you know, sitting in a meeting room, like, you know, just looking at past the camera, like with a little kind of like a dead smile on their face, you know? And it's like, what if you did corporate photos, stock photos of like, you know, the father of the bride and the groom shaking hands and they have these really plastic smiles, like, you know, like models, right?
Yeah.
That could be kind of funny.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. There's definitely lots of opportunity, in particular settings, I think the big thing is, you show what you want to sell, right? Especially with photography. And you, if you put that on, if you put one of those on your website, everyone's going to want them. And not that there's anything wrong with that,
right.
But then you get the 4-hour elopement where it's like, no, I want this. And I'm like, okay, it takes like an hour to do with everybody. So let's temper our expectations here.
Yeah. There was also one I'm friends with, his name is Rich Redmond. He plays for Jason Aldean.
Yeah.
And he and I do a podcast together. I've known him for almost 18 years.
Yeah.
So he's gotten me into some of the shows. One in particular was in Charlotte, North Carolina. And this has something to do with photography.
Mm-hmm.
Gets me in the meet and greet line and everything. And we come up to Jason, and it's my brother-in-law and I.
Mm-hmm.
And we had been drinking since 2 that afternoon. I mean, we were just like, eh. And I said, what would be a great idea is when we get up there, we act like we just completely fanboy out on them.
Uh-huh.
Like, because everybody up there is just like, they're taking the picture.
Uh-huh.
So he's like, what do you mean? I said, like, stick our fingers in our mouths, like, ooh, like, like it's a boy band, and that's what we did. And it even cracked Jason up.
Yeah.
So back then they were putting all those photos up on his website so you can grab them and use them on social media. Yeah. Ours finally comes up. I see it. I'm like, oh, that's too funny. I'll have to show it to you. And I put it up on Facebook, and because I was in radio at the time, somebody in my radio station shared it, and somebody who knew him saw it. They knew her, and they reached out and said, those guys? We remember those guys. we made an impression.
Oh yeah.
I'll have to show that to you.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
So Jordan Roepke Photography, all the information will be in the description, and details will be therein, because it's an interesting spelling of a last name. It's Roepk.
PKE.
PKE, that's correct. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll put all that information down there. Any other thing that's happening that you want to put out there real quick at all, or?
No, I mean, it's the slow season now, so it is engagement season. So if you know anyone who is currently engaged, about to get engaged, or has been in a relationship that is much longer than is socially acceptable,
right.
Let them know.
An urging to get engaged party.
That's right.
Yeah. You need a photographer for that.
Yeah. Relationship intervention.
Like an intervention.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Have the groom, the guy that's not proposing, walk into a whole room of family, and there you are, taking pictures of like, what the hell is this? Mm-hmm. That would be great. I think that would be a thing. Are you a bride who just, dude, get on with it, or crap, or get off the pot, for crying out loud? All right. And let's have an intervention with all the families. And completely blindside the groom.
It's like the opposite of love at first sight. It's just, we've been together for 15 years,
Come
Matt.
on, let's do it. Get to the chopper. The people need air. All right, there we go. So find and follow us, even though you found us by listening to it. I always say this for some stupid reason. Follow us, share us, subscribe. If you know somebody who would be a good guest opportunity for the podcast, let them know, MMTBP.com. And Mr. Jordan, thanks for driving all the way out here, man.
Thanks for having me. It was a slog, but it was worth it.